Welcome back. Today I'm going to try to troubleshoot 3 more rapid losses in addition to the ones in the previous video because I have continued to lose games. And I also want to talk about some strategies that go through my head or things that I do either consciously or unconsciously in order to deal with discouragement or disappointment from failing, or at least temporarily failing at an endeavor like chess, but it could also apply to other endeavors. Just to be clear, I'm not a mental health professional, and if you think you might be dealing with something like actual depression or anything serious like that, please reach out to the appropriate person. When I say dealing with disappointment, I'm just talking about disappointment or discouragement. One thing that I do is I keep it in perspective. I try to remind myself that even though I have suffered a string of losses, as you can see here on your screen, 6 in a row now, and 2 more in a draw before that last victory that I had. Perspective-wise, before that, if you scroll down, I only had 1 loss in a string of wins, so it evens out. I back down to 1300 now, as you saw on my splash screen, but I was at about 1300 here when I started winning this string of games. And so even though I went up as high as 1358 at one point, 1359 after this draw, now I'm back down to 1300. So the perspective there is that, you know, it went up, it came back down. That's normal. Another perspective that I wouldn't tell to someone else, but I'll tell to myself, is it is just a game. I wouldn't tell that to someone else or want someone else to tell that to me because it's important to me. And that feels like that's diminishing what I'm doing. If somebody says, oh, it's just a game, kind of like when the person you thought that was going to be the love of your life rejects you or walks away, and somebody tells you, oh, there's plenty of more fish in the sea, or some phrase to that effect, that saying that that one wasn't that important, but it was important to you. And this game is important to me, but to myself, I can remind myself that it is just a game. That's what I mean by keeping it in perspective. 2 different ways to look at that. Another thing that I do, and I have always done in my life, is have an identity outside whatever my endeavor is. I've known people who focused their entire identity on whatever it was that they did. You see this a lot, or I saw this a lot in high school or even college, when somebody wraps their entire identity into a sport or some other activity, and you know that person, the only thing you know about them is that they play baseball or soccer or whatever the sport might be. And that's what they do. And someday, when they don't end up succeeding at that, say they don't get picked for the college team, or after college they don't end up going pro, then the rest of their life is constantly just looking back at that one thing because their entire identity was wrapped up in it. I've known people my age who still look back to their glory days of playing high school football, and I mean American football, but it could be any sport. And after that, they just got a job to pay the bills, but they never really had an identity outside how good they used to be at that sport. I've never been like that, and I continue to force myself to have an identity outside of chess. I am somebody that plays chess, but I'm somebody without chess. And another thing that I do, I catch myself doing automatically, and I'm grateful for that, is that I've learned to give it time. When I am down emotionally, I recognize that that's a period of chemical imbalance in my body that's going to pass. And if you just wait until maybe get a good night's sleep, then you'll feel better tomorrow. And so I've learned to do that. I lost a string of games, just set it down. After some time, those negative feelings will just pass. Unless you're dealing with something much more serious. And as I said, please seek the appropriate help in those situations. But I am going to look at these games and see what I could have done better. In this first game, I've already identified where my mistake was. I did okay through the opening. We opened with the Carol Khan defense, and nothing outstanding happened up until about, I think, move 17 is where things started to go wrong. At this point, according to Stockfish, I actually had a -8, -9 advantage. I didn't here I did play my best move, which is developing that knight. Since they didn't play this advanced variation and taking control of that square, I was able to get that out and castle. After they castled, now here I'm supposed to play queen to b8. That's one of the possible moves, or queen to c7, which I do understand that you're lining up down there toward h2, but but I don't get what's so big about that with this knight sitting here. I do know it's getting it off the back rank, but I thought castling was better here, so that's what I did. And they brought that knight back, which I didn't know whether that was great or not. And here again, Stockfish wants me to put the queen on c7. I played rook to e8 instead, but we're still about even. We're within a point either way. And that exchange didn't go exactly as I had planned, but I'm still okay. And my opponent is less than half a point ahead of me, which is about normal for white. I understand they back this bishop up in order to aim down here at my h-pawn. And here it wants me to play knight to g4. I guess I could see that. And Stockfish says they would put their bishop here on f4, and then we would exchange bishops this way. I don't know about that. I just felt like if I put this here, they would have just dropped the bishop back. And then what's it doing there? I guess it would have been aiming at the pawn. I guess that makes sense. That if they did just drop the bishop back, I could have taken the pawn. That's okay. That's not where I made the mistake. I did finally put the queen on c7, which turned out to be not horrible. They played h3, which was their best move in this situation. Now here's where I made my mistake. And I don't know exactly what I was thinking. I played knight to h5. And what I must have been thinking at that time was to challenge the f4 square. Because right now they have two pieces looking at f4 right now, and I have two pieces looking at f4 right now. And I guess I was thinking I could come here and sort of clear the way for this battery to come down through here. But it wasn't very good thinking. And as some context here, neither my opponent nor I had taken more than a minute yet. And we're on move 17 of a 10-minute rapid game. So I definitely could have played better here. Stockfish recommends d4, which I think even knowing that's the best move, I probably wouldn't play it. My opponent has 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces covering that square. And I just have the one. So I don't think I would have played that. But knight to e4, I do get. It would block this bishop from coming on down through here. So I do understand knight to e4 is the second recommendation. Rook to e7 is also suggested as good, I guess to double up the rooks. But I played my knight to h5, which wasn't counted as a mistake or inaccurate even. It's fine. What's not fine is when my opponent saw the undefended knight here and moved their knight out of the way, and when they did that, I just forgot that that knight was there. And I shouldn't be doing that. I've still used less than a minute of my 10 minutes here on move 18. And I cannot figure out why in the world I would have played that, but that's what I played. Sometimes when I go back, I cannot follow my own reasoning, but I played queen to d7 inexplicably. What does that do? What does that do? I have no idea. But what I should have played here once they opened up this discovered attack on my knight, I could have played my knight to f4, which was what I was talking about earlier, aiming all those pieces at f4. And now they've removed one of their defenders of f4. So why didn't I do that? This was just a few seconds later. I don't know. I also could have played bishop to h2 check. I don't know that that would have been great because they would have just moved out of the way. And then g6, it says after that. And g6 is my third best move in this situation instead of those other two. But yeah, so I just played here and lost my knight. And we went on. I decided not to resign here, and I kept playing, but I never gained back anything resembling an advantage here. So let's take a look at the next game. Okay, here we are in the second game. I've gone ahead and skipped ahead to the first place where I made an inaccuracy that gave my opponent a slight advantage. Here, Stockfish wants me to just drop this knight back to, I guess, to challenge their bishop. I don't know what that would do other than encouraging them to move their bishop back one way or the other. So I don't know that I would have found that. Also, I don't really feel like my bishop's under threat right now. I don't think they're going to trade their bishop for this knight. But maybe dropping that back would allow me to do something else. I don't know. But anyway, that's what I should have played. I also could have played rook to d1, which I do understand. That would line my rook up with the queen. Or just putting my knight back here. But I played the pawn to f3 to kick their knight back. That turned out to be slight inaccuracy. And then as we went on, nothing too serious happened. My opponent has made their own inaccuracy, so I have a slight advantage again. I did finally get the rook over to d1, but here that turned out to be a mistake. And the reason it was a mistake is because my opponent had just lined up this battery. And so what I should have done here was play g4. I don't understand that. Why not g3? Wait. Yeah, Stockfish is saying g4, but couldn't they still do that? Why not? What's wrong with g3? G3 would have just been inaccurate. But why? What would g4 do? Couldn't they still take this? Oh no, now my queen's guarding that. Okay. Okay. That's why I needed to move the g-pawn, because it was in the way of the queen guarding that pawn. Okay. Well, as I've said, why isn't that working? Okay, well, what I played instead was rook to d1. So that allowed them to take my h-pawn with check, which they did, and I should have moved this way, but it doesn't look like it's that much different. Oh, no, Stockfish has changed its mind. It now says king to h1 is best. The game review said that was not accurate, but that's what I played in the game, and it said that was an inaccuracy. But just now on Stockfish's suggested moves, after it ran for a while, at depth 22, that was listed as the best move. Okay, so I don't feel so bad, but they brought their queen down here. And here I thought I was lost. I thought the game was over. I had no idea that it was only -1. But here I needed to play... Oh, okay, see, Stockfish is still changing its mind. I did play the best move. And they took back, and I took back. Those were all best moves. But then my opponent played queen to h4. And of course, here I knew that the idea was to pull the bishop back someplace, but I wasn't sure where. And what I need to play now is g4. I don't think I would have seen that during the game. But I've got to learn to see that g-pawn is what's in the way of me getting over there. Also, yeah, I think they were planning on putting the bishop back here, and if I had played the g-pawn all the way up, yeah, that would have allowed my queen access into here, especially after I had to move over out of check. But anyway, that's what Stockfish is suggesting. I did not play g4, I did not play g3. I didn't even play rook to h5, which for some reason is my third best move, but it would have been a blunder. I played an even bigger blunder, which was bringing the rook back there, and now that's mate in 3. Unstoppable, nothing I can do about it, because I didn't move the g-pawn any of the times that I was given the opportunity. And for me, having let them set up that battery in the first place, how their bishop moved back and their queen moved up when they lined up, I didn't notice that they were lining up. This goes back to the advice of paying attention to what your opponent is doing and looking, what is their plan? I think that's what I did. I got tunnel vision on my own plans and what my own pieces were supposed to be doing, and I didn't look to see what my opponent was doing. But not a blunder in the way that I just hung a piece in the other game, or the elementary blunders from my previous video. This one was definitely different than that, because it wasn't hanging a piece. I hung a pawn, but I still could have got out of that if I had just played carefully. And I definitely should have seen that moving the g-pawn would have allowed my queen access into that corner. Okay, let's look at the third one. Okay, this is the third game, the position in which I gave it all away. But I should mention, in that last game, my opponent played with 94% accuracy. I don't think they were cheating. I just think that they saw my mistakes and took advantage of them. And they did have a couple of inaccuracies, and they didn't always play the best move. So I wouldn't suspect that they were cheating, but they did play really well. So it wasn't just me missing things like that queen and bishop battery. It was my opponent was playing at their peak, I guess. Now in this game, I had a -4 advantage here, but it's an only move situation. And here, my opponent and I have both made mistakes and blunders before this, but when we got to this point, I was ahead, and I had to play rook to c8. Right here is my only move. And I now see, here I did make an elementary mistake. At least I would call it an elementary mistake. It's certainly a mistake below the level that I've reached. I should have known. I played that, bishop to e8. Not only does that get out of the way of them being able to take my queen, assuming they would leave theirs there, which they didn't, but it allows them to move their queen out of the way and then take my queen. So yeah, that's what I played. And of course they checked, and I had to move out of check. Well, I could have blocked, right? But if I had blocked, that would have been mate. So I didn't do that. But as it turns out, it's mate in 5 anyway. So I moved out of check, and they took my queen. And really, what am I going to do? It says bishop to f7 is my best move. Oh, actually, that's kind of tricky. I didn't even think of that. Okay. But yeah, back here, this was elementary right here because they don't have to leave their queen sitting there. I thought maybe they would. This was hope chess, and I shouldn't be doing that at this in the 1300 level. I thought, you know what? They'll take my queen, and then I'll take their queen, and then my pawns are in better shape. I think that's what I was thinking, is that my pawns were in slightly better shape. I actually have a passed pawn. My opponent has a passed pawn, but it's way back there. I have a passed pawn that's right here. So, yeah. Rook to c8 is the only move that maintains my advantage. Now, if I had played e5, that would have kept us close to equality, or f4 would have taken us back to equality. But to maintain my advantage, I had to play here, which I don't think they would have taken. It says it doesn't matter, that if they check, I will block. And of course, if they take this rook, which would be check, I would capture back. And if they played queen to g3, which is their next best move, then I would have to find e5. So those 3 color-coded sequences are the 3 best options for my opponent at this point. But I thought I was being sneaky here, but instead I gave away the game. So when I play this, when I played this, it dropped from me having a -4 advantage to them having mate in 6. And of course they saw that, oh wait, if I move my queen over here where it's check, then they lose their queen, and they were right. So I had a mix here of elementary blunders, hanging the knight, hanging my queen in this case, and then the middle of these 2 games was a little bit more complex, where I wasn't watching what my opponent was doing as carefully as I should have. But back to the dealing with the discouragement, this time has passed. This was some time ago now, hours and hours ago. So the time has passed, the negative emotion is gone. Yes, I'm still a little discouraged, but I know that I made it to 1300 in the first place. So I know I made it to 1359 already. So I know that I can get there again. And I am keeping it in perspective and making sure that my identity is not wrapped up just in this game. If it was, I would feel pretty small right now. But as it is, I'm going to be okay. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.